usually you have two schedules. You have one internal production schedule, which consists of everything, which is more for you and your internal partners, so that everybody knows what you do. And then you have one client schedule, which is a very simplified schedule of what it is that you're doing, right? But only points what they need to do. So you skip all the middle things. You only say, this date you're gonna get this, and you need to give us feedback by that date, right? The first thing that I do is look at the client schedule, which is this, very nicely. So we have 4 main films and 4 BTSs we need to do. So when I did this first, I always use Team Gantt. So here we have divided into editing VFX, which is my areas, so say that there's animation and then there's sound design, which has 2 managers of themselves. Animation schedule and sound design schedules, it's the sound managers and the animation producers' responsibility.
But you should still have overview.
Yeah, exactly. So it's still like I made this schedule, right? There's a very classic way of work. You know, you start with editing, which usually is the base. First editing, which is called offline editing. And offline editing is when you edit with proxies. So you guys know when you film films, right? You can get very big files. You can film like 8K. You can film like 8K footage, and you need to deliver it in super high resolutions and everything. And those files are way too big to edit with, because in the offline stage you need to be quick. So then you create proxies out of these 8K footage. So you like downsize them to say like 1080, and then the editor has an easier time to edit, right?
Wow. What do you use it to downsize it to proxies?
Oh, that you can ask the editor.
You don't know.
I don't know. There's a billion different ways of doing it. I don't really know what the standard is, but you know, you should have a data manager or the editor does themselves. So that's the offline stage, right? So what you do in the offline stage, that you want to have an offline edit and an offline lock. So when you have an offline lock, that's like a very rough version of what the film will look like, right? You have like placeholder stuff, you're putting in stuff, and you're trying to tell how the edit will look like. So if you have like a minute, you're making this edit, and when you get a lock, then you know where the titles are gonna be. You don't have the titles yet, but you know where they're gonna be. You know the music you're gonna use. You know you're gonna, you know, all of that to get an offline, and that's gonna be the base, right? It's a very rough edit. What you do when you get an offline lock is that you go over to conforming.
Conforming.
Which is when you take the proxies and bring back the original footage. So online is the stage after offline, but the first thing you need to do from offline to online is conform, and that's taking the proxies and making them high-res data. So if you would use the high-res, which is 8K, you know, very high quality.
Then there's another editor.
Yeah, exactly. So like if he would have the high-res, he wouldn't be able to edit. Like it would go so slow. He would do like one cut and you'd have to wait, 20 minutes.
Oh, makes sense. But which editor would online edit?
So then that's when you go to an online editor.
Which is different.
Which is because our online editors works in Flame, which is like a program that is designed to handle heavy data. Right? And like the mindset is a little bit different. So an offline editor is more about like story, get it on, create a lot of versions, make it right. While an online editor is more like nitty gritty, particular, very data driven. Like he needs to be very organized, because he needs to. Because the thing is, when you get to online stage, it sounds relatively easy when you're only in the editing part, because then you're only handling grading. But if you're going to VFX, the online editor becomes like the person who assembles everything in the end, right? So with editing, when you go from offline to online, you conform and then you send it out to grading, and the colorist will grade the high-res footage, right? And then the colorist grades it and sends it back to the online artist, and the online artist switches it and makes sure it has everything on. Same thing with animation. The animator will do their animation titles, send it back to the online artist, he puts on top of the online thing. And then everything, same thing with sound. When the offline lock is done, send it to sound, they do the sound design, send it back to the online artist, he puts everything together, right? And then the online artist will have the final he pretty much just puts together everything. And if you have VFX, it becomes even more complicated because then you have 3D, you have compositing, you have tracking, you have like everything, and he's the one who puts everything together. So that's why this becomes a little more complicated. It never is as straightforward as it is. But it's important to always have that one in mind, at least when you work with film, so that you know where you are in the stage. Like you do not do grading before you get an offline one, because then you're gonna have to do it twice. Because if something changes, the grader have to redo everything. Same thing with tracking. You don't do a tracking before you have an offline one.
What was tracking?
Okay, now we're going way heavier. Let's pause tracking to another time, because then you need to go into VFX, and VFX is way heavier. This is the classic video.
I think you need to have a Skillshare course, right?
Okay, but do you